So the immediate question again is why did white women vote for Trump? That doesn't seem to make any sense. I got a couple ideas here, but this is, I've already pointed out what I said, right? But let's go beyond that a little bit. This is my interpretation of this article in the New York Times is that it could be marketing from the Trump people, but I would be more inclined to think of it as propaganda from the people that put him in power, right? So, the CIA puts him in power. CIA floats propaganda pieces to justify it and explain it. It all kind of adds up. Because it's kind of hard to make sense of it otherwise. But let's put that aside for a minute and let's take it on face value. So they ask a college educated, we should use this term loosely here because I think she said she has a marketing degree. That's not education, right? In theory, if you went to school and studied marketing and they had you reading, Chomsky and Herman and stuff like that, right? Then sure, but that's not what they teach you, right? It's like anti-education. It's like going to school to learn how to not think, right? No, really. There's a big education industry, and they teach you how not to think. A lot of it's in the real schools. I don't even remember, but I don't think I think it was like a community college, right? But even the real schools, there are entire departments that are dedicated to teaching kids how to not think. And that's a big part of going to school nowadays. I say Chomsky and Herman, these are people that have written on this as well. But this is what they claim happened. Or what they claim this person actually existed, and this is what they claim she said. If we could have export agreements with, say, France or Germany, or let's face it, Russia, they would take our quality goods and we could be great again. Now, you'll note the use of the slogan, right? This idea of being great again. Just the language makes this. Do I really think somebody said that? Like in their reasoning, the slogan appears in their reasoning. That would be remarkably effective. That would, and supposedly this is somebody that went to school to study marketing. She didn't learn much of value, did she? It's the most brainwashed person you'll ever see, or you'll ever hear or read about, right? But if you take that on face value, what Frable is saying, I think Frable was her last name. What Fran Frable here is saying is that person wants a trade agreement with Russia, with Europe, a trade agreement like the TPIP, which everybody knows that Clinton supported, but which Trump openly opposed. So she claims that she wants to vote for Trump because she supports Clinton's policies and is opposed to Trump's policies. So therefore she will vote for Trump. I know that it's maybe a little bit unfair of me to say that Clinton supports free trade when she went to great pains to suggest that she didn't, even though everybody knows she did. But at the very least, we know that Trump did not, right? Or there's no reason to think Trump did or would. So you claim you want trade, but then you vote for the protectionist? Let's remember that there's a slogan here. Great again. And we'll be back in a minute on that thought. But I've read a bunch of articles like this, okay, where the justifications that people present for their votes are either specious or, in a lot of cases, flat out wrong. Okay, and the only thing that sticks out is that so many of these voters are too ill-informed to make a rational choice. So there's this narrative that's come out after the election suggesting that, well, we look at these voting, we look at these voting results and we say, these people are voting against their own interests. And then people say, no, you don't understand their interests. You're being presumptuous in claiming that you can understand. I don't think that this debate is outside of reality, right? This is an abstract debate. Are people voting in favor of their choice, of their own interests? Are they voting against their own interests? Do we not understand their interests? These aren't. I think that the actual reality is that they're too ill-informed to make a choice. And they might think that they're voting in their own interests, but they don't have enough information or enough quality information to actually vote in their own interests. But again, you'll notice that she at least heard the slogan. That's what I get away from reading that article, okay? Is that this supposed Trump voter, which may be an imagination of an intelligence agency, but the supposed Trump voter didn't understand what she voted for. She did not understand the issues. Or she had a concept. Maybe it's not fair to say that she didn't understand the issues, but I think it's fair to say that she didn't understand the candidates' positions on those issues. She seems to realize that America has a trade deficit, at least, right? That America needs to increase its exports if it wants to bring back the middle class. She seems to have a decent grasp on the issues. She didn't have a good grasp on the policies, on the positions, on where the candidates stood. And I'm not going to say that's the media's fault. That's her fault. The information is completely open. It's available to her. If she had done the research, she would have known. Okay, Clinton appears to support trade, even though she's been wishy about it. I think she should have come out and supported it. She should have said she supports it. And she should have hit Trump on not supporting it. Even though I don't agree with her on that position, be honest. Stop pretending. People are going to look back at Clinton. They're not really going to. I mean, that was the problem with Clinton, is that she was a bad liar. Right? They were both liars. You think Trump is going to do half of what he said? But Trump convinced people. Clinton was a terrible liar. And when you have politicians that are terrible liars, they just shouldn't lie. Now, I think a part of the problem there is that Clinton's support for free trade was not ideological. It wasn't economics, right? She supported free trade because she was told to support free trade by her donors and by the people around her. I don't think that Clinton herself had any attachment or connection to the idea of trade, of open trade. Or that, frankly, that she even really cared. She seemed to be more interested in foreign policy. Which, but still, nonetheless, if she had support for an issue, she should have been more, It's just, there's no use to lying to people when everybody knows you're lying. And it's really hard to believe that she thought people believed her. Did she really think that people thought she didn't? Anyways. Back to this supposed Trump voter. She did understand the issue, but she didn't understand where the candidates stood on the issues. And she did understand the slogan. So how did she get around to getting this confused? How did this get backwards? Presuming this is a real person. I think the way that this works is probably like this. 1. I want America to be great again. 2. Trump says he will make America great again. 3. In order for America to be great again, we need to do this list of things, and whatever the list is, right? That list is specific to each individual. Each individual will have a different list. And 4, therefore, Trump wants to do this list of things. This is the logic, right? Instead of looking at the policy positions and saying, I agree with this, or I agree with that, or I disagree with this, or disagree with that, what people will do is they will listen to the marketing and they will project their interpretation of the marketing. And I actually think that this is not, I think this is the way that they're trained to think. This is how you're taught to think in English class. That everybody has an opinion, right? And that your opinion is valuable. We're taught magical thinking. And then the marketing is triggering it. And it's not a new phenomenon. My memories of I mean, I'm not old enough to remember the election of Clinton, or at least not the first time. I remember Clinton's second election. I do remember Bush, but my memories of Bush was like the whole world was like scared, right? It was like this like ominous, frightening thing that was happening. Like I don't, like as unpopular as Trump seems, like as much as people hate Trump, I never met anyone who had anything good to say about George W. Bush. I mean, I know that I live in Canada. They did opinion polls in Canada. It was like he had like a 3% approval rating at some point, right? It's like Bush had zero, like literally zero support in Canada, right? You couldn't find anyone that supported him, right? But still, I mean, like I don't. There was no. I have no experience of support for George W. Bush, but I do remember that we saw this with Obama. People voting for Obama because they wanted an end to the war on terrorism, and either ignoring these calls for escalation, or just being unaware of them. One of the things actually I'm just remembering. I knew some people on the internet, and one of the things that they told me about George W. Bush was that they wanted to restore a sense of respect to the presidency. We see how well that worked out, huh? I mean, of course, it was just propaganda, right? They're just repeating something that they heard, but it was probably the tax cuts. They thought they were going to get a tax cut. That's probably what it was. But we didn't. I have no experience of this kind of, this kind of projective thinking. But I mean, I don't think there was any populist movement behind George W. Bush either, though. It was like just, really dry, get out the vote type politics, right? But this kind of projection that we're seeing with Trump is exactly the same thing we saw with Obama. People project what they want to be, what they want a candidate to be onto the candidate instead of listening to what the candidate actually says. And when you try and contradict, when you try to bring evidence into their bubble, they ignore it. Their fantasy is more important than the evidence and the reality, okay? And that's called magical thinking. It's a well-understood quality of a backwards, religious, and uneducated society, which is what the United States is. And if we want to be realistic and honest, probably throughout large sections of it always was. Studying marketing or business at a community college doesn't qualify one as being educated, and you have to take that into account when you look at the exit polls. So the term college educated is extremely misleading. You gotta be, and I've actually seen a few articles try try to adjust for that since then. Um, but regardless, there's still, I mean, it's Donald Trump is whatever you think will make America great again. That is the power of an effective slogan on a population of slate sheep, except that he isn't. He's a dime a dozen establishment corporatist Republican, very much the same as Barack Obama. He's neither on the far left nor on the far right. He's the status quo. He will neither stop the ship from sinking nor blow it up. He will stay the course. He will neither change the world for the better or for the worse. He will leave things intact. Meaning that if you thought things were moving in the wrong direction, you can expect more of the same. And if you're optimistic about the future as things were going, then I think you have little reason to backpedal. Except climate change. He's bad on climate change. Everything else I think you're going to see is pretty much the same. But it's this power of projective thought, of magical thinking. I pointed out a few times that I kind of want to keep. I want that to be kind of a running thread here in the comments, kind of when I see it, because it's something I've noticed a lot through my life as I've aged, and I think that it's a phenomena that's growing. You know, it's not just the way that they teach you in English class. It's the prevalence of yoga. It's hip hop culture. It's all of these things culminating into a culture that thinks reality is what you imagine it to be. You know, pop physics, that's another thing. It thinks that the world is what you imagine it to be, right? Rather than what it is. And that's a total breakdown in the scientific method, in empirical thought processes. And it's not something that, like, it's being culminated. Or sorry, not culminated. It's being cultivated. It's culminating, but it's being cultivated by people in power. They want you to. They don't want you to be able to analyze things, right? They don't want you to be able to think for yourself. They want to be able to plant these thoughts into your head and have you imagine things. So, I mean, all these questions, I think that a lot of them are missing. They're trying to make too much sense of something that I think is ultimately the effect. You know, people want to find a solid, concrete reason why people voted for Donald Trump. And I don't think one exists. I think that it's very much like Barack Obama. That you've got this wide variety of reasons. And it's essentially as many things as you can imagine. What it comes down to, why did he win? If you think he won, because he had a better slogan. And, you know, like it, people have been warning the country, warning the continent, warning the whole of Western society that if you don't educate your citizens, you will destroy their ability to have a democracy. I say warning, of course it's not an accident, it's by design. But the alarm bell has been ringing for a long time. You know, so people look at racism, they look at, you know, economic anxiety, you know, the breakdown of the working class, people are angry, all of these sorts of things. None of them really, you know, like you look at, there's a major point of contradiction in it throughout every one of these points, right? Most Republican voters are affluent. I mean, they always have been. Everybody knows that, right? And a lot of them live in integrated cities. It's not to say that that the unemployed white Trump voter doesn't exist, but it's clearly not. It's not the dominant, the manifestation of this. And rather, it seems to be that the more people you ask, the more answers you get. And that the only constant is the slogan and how people are interpreting it, which is completely differently in every circumstance. That, well, not in every circumstance. There's patterns, but it's this idea of projecting it. You know, and I mean, I'm not saying don't look, don't look for concrete, solid reasons. You know, the more you look for them, the more they can be ruled out, kind of thing. I mean, it helps me make my point, and it helps. I mean, the purpose is to understand, right? But I mean, this is a pattern. We've seen this before, and I think that we'll probably start seeing it more and more again. This is how you expect people to react to an election when they're not able to comprehend what's happening. Is that I mean, you can see it, you can read it in Orwell, you can read it in 1,000 other books, that they get a slogan. And they grasp the slogan because they can't grasp the issues. So like don't look for the issues. Look for the marketing and look for the effects of the marketing, because I think that's what did it.